everyone, and welcome to Walford Weekly's review of 2021, the final year in the Jon Sen era. Now, Rob and I will be going through some of the stories that happened last year and giving our view on ultimately how we thought the year went, from our little soap that tries EastEnders. And as I mentioned, Rob is here joining us yet again. Where are you? Where are you, Rob? Where are you, mate?
I'm here, Alex. I'm here, mate. Hello, how are you? Happy New Year and all that malarkey. Hopefully we should be back on video this week. 2021. What a year it's been, eh? What a year. We've had fun. We have had fun this year. We have had fun discussing this year, but for the most part, haven't we? It's been a fun year for the podcast. We've enjoyed talking to all of you.
We've enjoyed talking to the people listening and watching ultimately. I'm glad that you've decided to jinx this video by saying hopefully this video will work this week. So good start for the show.
Sorry.
But there was highs, but there were some very definite lows this year. Yeah. Let's try to spin what we can, and talk about what we enjoyed and then see where we kind of go on our journey through this year. Yes. Rob, let's start with you. What's one of the stories that kind of sticks in your mind from 2021?
Good or bad? There's a few options for both. Which would you prefer? Should we start nicely? Obviously we started the year. I seem to remember I was going through January, and for the first few weeks we were kind of like, this is quite good. What's going on? All the storylines are really strong at the moment. And to be fair, the year started really strongly, didn't it? Because we were just getting the climax of the Mick and Katie story. Mick ringing Samaritans and talking about suicide, and then Katie, it's kind of big. The whole Katie plot being revealed essentially, and that was all really good, wasn't it? It was all really strong. Danny Dyer gave some good performances. The writing was pretty good as well. So that was all very nice. The Mick and Katie stuff I remember was talking quite positively about, didn't we? We both quite enjoyed it and thought it was a really well done story for the most part.
Yeah, it was really enjoyable. I think we were going into 2020 territory because wasn't it New Year's Eve when he did the Samaritans call, if my memory serves me correct?
Yeah,
but I will just briefly bring up because I remember liking it a little bit more than I did, but I kind of saw it from your point of view and then picking up and realising, having this anonymous voice was probably a better way of almost kind of detracts the story, so it becomes about Mick rather than being about the person making the phone call. But yes, and then when the story carried on, we then started to learn exactly what Katie had done and what her intentions were now with Mick, and the way she was brainwashing him. Some real energy motivated scenes. They were bubbling up as well. This was the first time when we first started noticing characters were bubbling up.
New Year's Day
with Katie and Mick. Yeah, on New Year's Day, and there was that was almighty row that they had at Katie's house.
Really strong scene.
The Katie and Mick stuff I really enjoyed, and I think it wrapped up very nicely too when you had the court case at the end of it where, Mick finally got justice. And also Nancy was back by that point as well. And Nancy had a fit outside the court because she was worrying about her family too.
Lee made a brief appearance at one point as well, didn't he? Was that this year? Was it this year? Yeah, I think it was New Year's. Yeah, New Year's Day. I think Lee kind of, because they did a sort of flashback to when Mick and Linda were telling the Carter kids about what had gone on. Apparently they'd gone over to wherever Johnny is these days and spoken to him. But then they did a really nice scene with Lee in the cafe, didn't they? Because they had, if I remember it rightly, that was when Linda also had to talk to the kids about her affair and the drinking. Was that right? Or one of the two? And basically
possibly,
all the problems
that came to a head.
Basically all the problems, right kids, while you were away, this is what Mummy and Daddy have been up to. And that was all really, really, really strong stuff. And the court case, leading into, because Nancy, was having, quite a few fits around the time. Nancy, by the way, who was thinking of going sterile at one point, I think that's kind of been, pushed aside.
I forgot about that. Yes.
Yeah. Yes,
because then her and Tanwa, they had divorced and she was keeping it as a secret. Yeah, well, she's found love since then, hasn't she? She's found Zach, so it's all fine. It's all well. Zach and Nancy babies are going to be the most beautiful, handsome babies in the world.
I mean, that was obviously a highlight of this year. Zach's arrival, probably one of the best new characters we've had in a long time. And frankly, Zach makes me want to have children. I'd have Zach's children quite happily. So that was a nice highlight.
Does he make you broody?
But yes, he does. He makes me feel pregnant. Yes, so we go into the court scenes, and obviously the big climax of those scenes was Nancy had a really bad fit outside. Whilst Mick was giving his final statement as to how, and that was all really strong. I remember I wasn't so. I thought because there was two really powerful moments going on at the same time, I wasn't sure whether they gelled together. But you really liked it, and I kind of watched it again and thought, yeah, no, that really was a strong moment. I think we ended on a Julia's theme for that episode, one of the only ones we've had of those this year.
Yes.
So yeah, on the whole, the Mick story was one of the highlights, I think of the year. Obviously, it started in 2020 and moved on into this year and climaxed this year. But I think that's probably one of the highlights of the year. I think that went really well.
I feel like it got a little bit ruined though by Linda's affair story for me. I didn't like Linda and Max's affair story. I thought that was felt a little bit. Like added pressure and added just basically as I said angst. Before, Carter's need something and more angst, and Carter's always needs something to be happening. So they thought, let's throw Max into the pot and make him have an affair, and making Linda pregnant as well. So Linda's had a baby Max baked bean.
Yes. Little Annie, because there was a time at one point during this year that we were kind of looking at the Carters and thinking there were so many storylines happening with the Carters at the moment. Like, I remember there was a scene where sort of Mick and Linda were talking, and it was quite obvious that Mick was almost like enough. Like, he had Nancy having really bad fits. He had his own stuff with Katie coming to the climax. He had the stuff with Linda having been revealed, and the fact that Linda was pregnant with Max's child, and that they were going to have to keep that all a secret. The poor man. He's had quite a year, hasn't he, in the grand scheme of things. I'm sorry.
Yeah, he has. This is my point. I think a lot of people get fatigued, don't they, from poor old Mick Carter.
Well,
but they always
I think that's always been the Carter's problem
because they're always the centre, I guess. Yeah.
Well, this is the thing. Well, yes, because because when you own the Vic, you tend to be quite at the forefront of all the stories. Now, of course, the Carters haven't been in the Vic all year round. Because the other sort of key storyline that was going on, especially at the start of the year, was Sharon and Ian. The big reveal that Ian had been in some way involved in Denny's death. Sharon discovering that, that all came out on. Yes, I mean that all came out on the Christmas Day the previous year. We discovered that Sharon was fully aware because it had been revealed that Sharon and Phil had been instrumental in Ian getting attacked, and now we knew that Sharon knew the secret of, well, what she assumed was the secret. And then we went into a very strange period where Sharon was trying to kill her best friend of nearly 35 years with an array of poisoned food items. We got poisoned Christmas pudding, we got poisoned carbonara. It was like the best. It was like the worst episode of Midsummer Murders I've ever seen in my life. Of that,
the carbonara was there to finish him off.
Oh, I mean, there were so many things wrong with that carbonara. For a start, how many fried onions she put in there. I remember that well. The amount of chopped onions she threw into the carbonara. It wasn't right. Was not right.
He's lactose intolerant.
So yeah, that was
all kinds of problems.
Yeah, all sorts of wrongness. I mean, yeah, that was one of our big complaints, I think, this year. We'll starting the list of complaints that we had about this year, was the Sharon and Ian storyline. Now, obviously, quite a big moment of this year is the fact that Ian has effectively left. We've lost Ian Beale, who has been there since episode 1 of the show. It feels like it should be more significant than it's kind of turned out to be, because it sort of felt Ian's had breaks before, and it didn't feel at the time like an end of a character arc. We knew Adam Woodjack was taking a break to go and do theatre stuff, which actors have done over the years, not a problem. But then his break sort of got longer and longer and longer, and then he went into I'm a Celebrity and basically said, "No, I've left. Like I'm free when I've done the theatre stuff." So. At the moment, it feels like we're never ever going to see Ian Beale again. I mean, how do you feel about that? Did you feel that the show misses Ian? Do you think that it's more a nostalgic factor that Ian should be there because he's been there since day one?
I mean, so much has happened to Ian Beale from day one, hasn't it? It's like he's had so many things thrown at him. So it almost feels as though a rest is probably a good idea for the character. I certainly think that, I don't blame him wanting to do it. When they did the interviews with Stacey Dooley, of all the actors that were on the show that she interviewed, the one that seemed the biggest fanboy of EastEnders was by far Adam Woodyard. So, and that's what for me feels like was such a shame, for the fact that he kind of just, his leaving, his exit from the show wasn't so much of an impact. It was more of a fade. He just kind of faded into the tube station, and that was the end of it. So yes, I would love to see him back. But at the same time, I think this rest is a very good idea almost for the actor as well, because Adam Woodyard looks so healthy. He looks so well from not being on the show, like not having to spend every night learning lines, eating from the BBC canteen. Like, you remember he used to photograph on his Instagram with like the food that he had to eat from the BBC canteen. First world problems to some, but for Adam Woodyard, that's not where the TV license is going, is it? No, that's the biggest problem. I mean, Sharon also had other stories this year as well, because not only did he try to kill his best friend for 35 years, but she also had her father's funeral, Gavin's funeral, where we were introduced to the aforementioned Zach in a blaze of glory when he was running around with the urn, and he broke into broke cars, and Kathy was there with Sharon, and they were sat in the car, and he was like, well, shall we let him in? All right then, go on then. And they drove away. I mean, for me, that was a real fun moment, and I actually quite enjoyed that, because it kind of showed, and it was a great introduction for a character like Zach. I was so unsure about Zach introducing a brother to Sharon, but actually it's worked out very nicely for her, and I think it's given her a whole new kind of story and a way to broach her as a character.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think Zach, I mean, obviously, but superficially, I'm a big fan of Zach. I've made no secret of that. But but I completely agree, actually. In terms of his character, he's been brilliant. Like you say, you've taken Sharon in a brand new direction. She is sort of flirting with the notion of going back in her old direction, I would argue, because she's sort of hanging around Phil a huge amount at the moment, isn't she? So, but the initial sort of, it was almost like they've started a whole new family with Sharon now, haven't they? Which kind of Sharon at the helm, with Zach there, with Albie. So I enjoy that, because Sharon was starting to feel very stale, I think, wasn't she? Like, she sort of become Phil's yes woman. So no matter, and she still is that in a lot of ways. I think Sharon's biggest problem as a character, they're so obsessed with the idea of Phil and Sharon being together, because presumably they're trying to recreate the Den and Angie thing, where you've got this toxic couple that can't be with each other, but they can't be without each other. In some ways, that is a sort of nice, constant character arc to have, but sometimes it just reaches a point where you would not still want to be with this man in no universe. Like, if the fact that Phil's gotten away practically with killing Denny, he was purely responsible for the boat crash. Sharon has never really noticed that or thought about that. She took all her anger out on Ian, who, if anything, had been trying to save Denny's life and nearly died himself in the process. So I think that's the problem with Sharon. She just sort of doesn't look at the true facts of Phil Mitchell. Phil, for his part, I think has been pretty much within character for the whole year. I know me and you have very different opinions on Phil Mitchell, don't we? Very different opinions. You wouldn't really mind if Phil Mitchell did an Ian, would you? And sort of went away for a substantial period of time. No. Whereas to me, Phil is EastEnders. Like, if Phil leaves, then you may as well remove the second capital E in the word EastEnders, because he, for me, is. I always find Steve McFadden so good on screen. He's so I instantly sort of connect with Phil scenes, and I always like it when a character that hasn't really had much to do with Phil has a scene with Phil. Someone like Patrick. Patrick and Phil scenes are always nice. I liked it when Vi and Phil were having little moments. Phil and Katz, of course, started this year. Now, the madness of the Phil and Kat stuff, I think we sort of forgot about at first, because it was they were actually writing it fairly, it was a likeable enough relationship to watch on screen at first, wasn't it? Because they were sort of doing this thing of, oh, we like each other, that's weird. Like, how do we react to this? Which was sort of relatable at the time. But what you actually need to remember, obviously, is the fact that a couple of years ago, Stacey basically nearly killed Phil. And now, fast forward a couple of years later, we've got Stacey, Jean, Kat, all of the kids, and Stacey's new wife living in Phil. And that wasn't a sentence we thought we'd say at the start of the year either. Stacey's new wife, all living at Phil's. I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind if the Stacey attacking Phil storyline had happened like years back, and we were kind of thinking, I bet we wouldn't have seen that coming. But that happened in this era, so like it's so mad that they've sort of just forgotten everything that they've written themselves and sort of just put them all together. And Stacey's quite happily doing her toenails on Phil Mitchell's sofa. I still kind of look at Stacey in the Mitchell living room. Why is Stacey there? Oh yeah, she lives there now. It's very strange. It's very strange. What do you think about Phil then? Tell me honestly. What do you think? What do you want to happen with Phil?
I mean, you have to wait until we read out our predictions at the end for people to carry on listening to the very end, because we'll talk about what our predictions were for the last year as well, which we wrote out right at the beginning of last year, and see how wrong or right we were. But I know for a fact that there's a Phil-centric one in my predictions as well. More of a hope perhaps rather than a prediction, but. For me, I don't know. Phil just seems to always get away with everything, and I know that seems to be the things that is Phil. But it's so frustrating that all the time, and it feels like no pun intended, it feels like that he can't judge anyone for being something when he's been it itself, because ultimately he probably has been at some point. Like he has this year has been the real year of the grass for Phil Mitchell. Like he's had a real problem with grasses, and yet seems to forget more than usual, he grassed Isaac this year. And he's not the first one to grasp people himself in the past either. He will grasp people if he feels like it would benefit him. But if anyone does anything to him, as in grassing, then oh my goodness, you need to watch your back, because he will go for you. So it's things like that kind of annoy me around Phil's kind of character. And because he's, I know that, it's always been quite a judgy, people always judge one another, but it's always been called out normally. If one of the characters should say, well, you've done this, you say, well, you're not so innocent yourself, Mr. or Mrs. Well, with Phil, because he's Phil Mitchell, people can't call him out on it. And that's what I find frustrating. It kind of loses any kind of energy for me. But, that pretty much is pretty much it. For argument's sake, for instance, this year, Phil, you talked about the boat crash, but last year, sorry, but also, he, for me, kind of lost Sharon's opportunity to have a relationship with Denny's daughter this year as well, because he was the one who kind of put the seeds in place for Sharon to say, like, well, you need to get full paternity for the child, and we'll look after it. You can look after it yourself. And so, but then the person who ultimately got the blame for that was Zach, and then got chucked out. And now Zach is living on the Carter's sofa, is he? Or I'm not sure where he's staying. I think so at the minute, yeah. But I mean, a lot of people are staying. I've just realised Tom is staying in the Carters as well. But anyway, that's for our review. Our review of the week coming up.
Phil and Kat, what are your thoughts on them as a few? Because they've been together nearly a year now. Madly enough, are we heading towards Kat? Is Kat Mitchell on the horizon? Do you think we'll get to Kat Mitchell, or do you reckon Sharon will stand in the way of that at some point?
I mean, it's been written that Phil is kind of really quite taken by Kat, isn't it? He's really kind of is. I mean, it's a relationship. I think I don't think marriage is on the cards, or if it was, then I think it will just be kind of like a Sharon might get in the way one way or the other, because at the moment now there's that jealousy story, isn't there, between Kat and Sharon, and there's a lot of catty remarks between one another. I feel like they're writing Kat and Sharon to be a bit like Peggy and Pat. I know we said this before with Shirley and Sharon. Yeah, but I feel like they've kind of distanced Shirley away from Phil now, even though she likes to do the kind of business stuff with Phil. But it feels like that Kat and Sharon seem to be now directing toward the new Peggy and Pat.
I mean he's no Frank.
Certainly from watching. Yeah, no, he's not. That's the other point, because Frank is a very vulnerable man who knows his weaknesses, while Phil thinks he has no weaknesses and thinks the sun shines out his behind, So yeah, you're right. Phil is no Frank. But is there a character like Frank on the square right now? I'm not sure there is.
I have to say, I was getting vibes from Rocky in a type of Frank type vibe, if I'm honest. You know, like how you've got, for a start, you've got a comedian playing him, and he's quite Londonish, and he's quite a cheeky chappy, and he's an older guy, and he's got these connections within very established characters of the square. We'll talk about the Rocky storyline now, because obviously Brian Connolly arrived as Rocky / Tom Cotton this year. And I think we've both been very positive about both Brian Connolly and the character. I think for the most part, we've really enjoyed this storyline. Now, there have been moments, especially towards the end of the year, where, again, I think we differ. And you certainly were not a fan of it is a rewrite. I completely accept that, of Dottie's paternity. Nick is now no longer Dottie's father. It is now Rocky / Tom Cotton. You weren't a fan of this. You weren't a fan of this at all, were you? Yes. Now, you weren't a fan of this at all, were you? And so to the point where both you and Ben were kind of like, well, that's fine. It can be rewritten. It's absolutely fine. Yeah, like we did with Tina's death, essentially. It's like, no, that's fine. That's going to be rewritten. That's absolutely fine. Tina's not dead. It's grand.
I mean,
then we'll move on to that. Again, we'll move on to Grey. We'll talk about Grey.
Yeah.
We will talk about Grey in a moment. We'll talk about Grey in a moment. But the Tom storyline and the Dottie storyline, where have you been at it with this year? Have you enjoyed it for the most part?
Yeah, I mean, I like the relationship between Sonia and Tom this year, and I'm happy for it to carry on. I mean, again, if we're led to believe they when they introduced Tom, they had a plan for him from the beginning. Whether they had a plan for him to stay on the show for the foreseeable future, I'm not sure. But I feel like they'd be silly not to now, because I think he's been quite a fan favourite, and I quite like the story. I mean, the only way they're going to get him out of the hole is by basically having him somehow becoming Sonia's kind of like maternal father, kind of like just, somehow have this relationship with Sonia. I can't see him staying on the show in any other way, really, because I don't think Dottie wants anything to do with him at all. And I just don't think that there's anything kind of connecting them. So I think the only way he'd stay would be with Sonia. But for the year, it's been lovely seeing him kind of like dodge and dive and trying to find a way around. Even though, again, the story for the reason he's staying could have easily have been solved by just Dottie asking for the money from Sonia in the first place. All of this could have not happened in the first place if she just asked Sonia for the money. But then I guess we've been introduced. We did also get that fantastic episode with Harry Redknapp, who looked a bit like the guy from the Wonga advert. So he was kind of walking around the bit going, that's all right. That's quite nice up there, isn't it? Yeah, no, cheers, mate. Yeah. All right, mate. Yeah, all right, yeah, mate. You could be a footballer. You could, come. Yeah, I'm going to sign you up.
Yeah.
Don't jump out of the windows during a fire.
Harry Redknapp.
Don't be doing that.
Actually, to be fair, we talk about Harry Redknapp. It's hilarious how much of an impact Harry Redknapp's one appearance apparently had on the show after his one episode. Because, of course, what happened is
he even got a cast photo. Can we also bring that up?
Well, he did. I will say briefly before I move on before I say what I was about to say. I actually don't mind this whole Dottie and Rocky father storyline thing. Now, bear with me. I know that it's a rewrite, and rewrites are bad, and rewrites are to make sure that the plot you're trying to make works is a bad thing. I am under no illusions about that. However, I think you're absolutely right in what you say, in that there's not much of a reason for Rocky to stay around the square anymore, and that was my biggest concern going forward when the climax of the Rocky story happened. We knew it was going to happen Christmas Day. We knew that Sonia was going to find out. I thought the climax of that was a bit weak, if I'm honest. I would have preferred the letters that we've been talking about for so many weeks to actually have a point in the end. The turkey should have been thrown. There is that, of course, as well. But the Dottie and Tom thing I do like, because it gives Tom a reason to stay around. I know you're not a massive fan of Sandy either, is the other issue, which again we differ on, because I actually really like Sandy as a character, and I find her quite interesting as a character, and I really like the parallels that are clearly there between Nick and Dot and Sandy and Dottie. That's there, and I really enjoy that, and I think she's played by a really good actress at the same time, and she's a piece of scum. I know that. As the character, as a person, is a piece of scum. but we have had many pieces of scum on the square over the years. Kim Woodburn would be appalled at the amount of scum and filth that has gone on in that square over the year, especially this year. And it sort of keeps these characters around, because Dottie, presumably one of the big storylines of 2022 is going to be Dottie and Tom. Presumably Sandy's going to be back at some point, because we've got questions. We need to know how Dottie thinks that Nick is her father. Did Nick... I wouldn't have put it past Nick to have been fully aware that this kid isn't his, and he literally just turned up with this girl to fool Dot out of his inheritance. That wouldn't have been beyond Nick's, beyond Nick's reach. At the same time, perfectly within character for Sandy to have had an affair with Nick's brother and to keep that a secret from him all this time. So, in terms of the character motivations, I think that's all fine and dandy. It's just the rewrite you don't like, isn't it? Because it removes Dottie and Dot's connection with each other, which I get.
I like the Tom element of it. It's just that I feel like the Sandy and the Dottie element that's not really entertaining me. It's not really keeping me enthralled. I'm not interested enough in it. So, but if you are, then more power to you.
Thanks, Alex.
I mean, we did briefly touch on Gray then, so let's talk about it. Gray pretty much has stretched his story in 2021 quite thin. Let's start with the biggest elephant in the room, and that is the fact that Kush had to die. If anyone listening to this, I'm using inverted commas here, had to die for them to progress the story, for him to then have a relationship with Whitney, which is now flipped on its head, because now Whitney is now suspicious of Gray, and now he's having a relationship with Chelsea. I mean, it's very, very convoluted. I don't know. It feels just completely like it's being written as they're acting it out. Like it's almost like an American sitcom. Like as they're performing the scenes, the writers are like, no, actually, we're going to change this quickly. We're going to do something a bit different now. I feel like there's no direction happening with Gray's story this year. What do you think?
It's crap. That's what I think. It's crap. I can't stand it.
I put it politely.
It's awful. No, I don't. Gray, I think, is my least favourite EastEnders character of all time. I hate everything about this storyline. It's gone on way too long. There's been criticisms of EastEnders dragging out storylines this year. I would say that no, they've dragged out one storyline this year, and they dragged out the wrong storyline. Because we've just been going around in circles with Gray, wondering who else he's going to take off us. I'm sure he's got one more murder left in him before this story eventually comes to its conclusion. I mean, we wouldn't be saying anything new, I think, to go over. The fact that it's gone on all year again is an outrage.
Yeah.
The fact that we lost Tina, and was Tina died this year? Was it? I think it was fairly. Was it late last year or early on in the year?
I think it was late in 2020. Again, I don't think if Tina was dead, yes. Which I don't think it was 2021. But still, I think you can put it as a full kind of part of the canon of 2021. And like a lot, as you say, it's just kind of just dragged on this Grey story. It's kind of lost direction. It's the whole point of it was a domestic violence story. Brilliant, fine, on board, go for it, 100%. It should have ended 3 months after Chantel died. And why? I don't know. Yeah. I don't understand why they're stretching out. I mean, they tried to give us empathy toward Gray this year by his father dying, and you kind of learning that Gray was a bit of a problem child, and like his parents, he bullied his mum, so he was a bit, he's nasty with his mum as well. But you're meant to feel a bit sorry for him, perhaps, because his father kind of like dismissed him and he wasn't loved or something. I don't know. And also, did that not mean that he kind of lied to the counsellor when he kind of had the counselling with Chantel that time? I mean, the only shining beacon we're getting out of Gray's story this year is that we got introduced to Laura, and Laura is A1 character EastEnders fodder, and I love her. And if I swear, if they kill her off, there'll be mobs outside Elm Street, I tell you.
I mean, they could keep her alive, but then would they bother? Have we seen the last of her? Because I think, to be fair, they could probably complete this story without ever showing Laura again. Because Whitney has got now. This is the thing. It feels like they've made it up as they went along the story. There have been long-running EastEnders storylines over the years that have felt very deliberate and have felt like, oh, I see, that was That we spoke about that in February, and now it's become relevant in November. I understand that. That was all very deliberate. That hasn't happened with this storyline. It has totally felt like every sort of revelation has been via new information. Like the recent, even Whitney finding out, oh, I see, Chantal had gone on these chat rooms, had she? Oh, right, and Curly
Yes.
Queen is the password, is it? Oh, right, and now that's happened, has it? Oh, okay, and now Chelsea's involved. Do you know what I mean? Nothing has been planned. Whereas, for example, maybe the Rocky storyline, you can tell that they actually had a plan with it from the start, and it felt like they had a plan from the start, and the twists more or less kind of hit the right mark. With this, nothing. It felt like, oh right, Cush needs to leave. All right, let's have Grey kill him. Let's turn Grey into a serial killer. It's felt very flat. It's felt very 2D, and it hasn't worked. And unfortunately, that has been the defining story of 2021 and this era as a whole. The Jon Sen, Kate Oates era as a whole. This and it is. This has been the story that they've kind of waved the flag of. Grey, and it's the weakest story out of everything they've done. I would argue that the Grey storyline has dragged the show down and the quality of the show down. Because I think without the Grey storyline, I think we'd have a bit more positivity about the year as a whole. I think we'd have enjoyed it a bit more. But you know, as soon as the next Grey kind of installment comes along, it's kind of like, oh, what? Go on then, get on with it. Why? How long do you think we're going to have? Do you think the anniversary week, or do you reckon they could just love us that little bit more and drag it out till next Christmas?
No. I've got good hopes that if they do try to drag it out any further, that the new EP is going to be like the first day. He's going to be like, right, we're killing Grey today, and then that will be the end of it. I don't think they're going to. I mean, that. I think anyone who has an ounce of dignity should realise that they need to end this story now. And also it's kind of clogging up, as you said, it's kind of using up room which could be used for other stories that perhaps we could have been invested in.
FGM, for
maybe
example.
A bit more room for Isaac's or the FGM story. Isaac's schizophrenia story. You know, two stories that I was quite interested in actually. But they just kind of cut short straight away. It kind of just ended, and it felt like.
But Grey goes on.
Was it because they were trying to make room for Grey? Yeah, but there's more Grey. More Grey. I mean, there was one, and also I say that about Laura, but there was also another, but this was off the show, where after the day when Cush had died, an announcement was decided to be made instead.
Now this is a highlight.
Almost covering up the cracks of the show, where they brought back Janine. 2021 is the year Janine returned to the show. Something that a lot of people thought they could not do, but they did. They were able they were able to get her back. I mean, you are a Janine flag flyer, so
see, Janine is my favourite EastEnders character of all time, so I'm delighted that she's back, and I've greatly enjoyed her return thus far. I feel like Janine's return has been slightly more subtle than we were expecting, because I think we were fully expecting Janine to have. I think a lot of people were kind of expecting Janine to kill Grey within her first week, and then sort of move on to other stuff. And I'm actually really glad that didn't happen.
Like a Rambo character with two guns like that, kind of walking down the square. Like, where's Grey? Where is Grey?
Right. Who's next? I mean, what have you? I mean, what have you thought of Janine's return as a whole so far? Have you enjoyed it? I mean, what did you want out of Janine's return? What did you think we were going to get?
I mean, I said that I did think that she would come in with a bit more of a bang. I didn't like the way she was introduced. I hated the whole pretending to be a doctor story, and like, was it Albie, wasn't it? She gave some nappy cream or something for a rash on Albie. And then she was introduced for that. I love Scarlett, I must say. I think the character of Scarlett is brilliant. And I'm hoping... Something I've noticed at the end of this year, actually, is that they seem to be doing a lot more with the kind of child actors, especially around Christmas. Whether it's because it's Christmas time and they just wanted to give them a bit of a bonus check for Christmas, I'm not sure. But give the parents a bit of money so they can buy themselves a new PS5 or something. But but I do like Scarlett, so I'm glad that they've introduced Scarlett. And by the end of the year, I'm glad that they finally introduced Janine. And by that, I mean that they finally saw Janine as the character that I wanted her to be. And some wonderful scenes, some wonderful actual conversation and dialogue that I would imagine Janine would have with Linda and with Mick. at the Vic, and when she bumped into Linda. So with the end of 2021 was the bloom of Janine, and I feel like 2022 is the beginning of Janine. This is the Janine now we're going to see. This is the Janine that we remember and we love, and we can't wait to see more of. But no, I'm pleased they brought Janine back. I must say, until December came, I was a bit worried that they were going to lose Janine because they were going to have anything interesting or fun for her to do. But I think we're now back on track with that, luckily.
Yes, I think 2022 is going to be the big year for Janine. So yeah, I'm looking forward to that.
So I think we'd be amiss, especially with a handful of fans out there, if we didn't at least mention Balam's wedding this year. Bang for Balam, as you so beautifully portrayed it this year. So obviously they had the firework display for their engagement, and then a few weeks passed, and then it was their big wedding. A lot of people, especially the Balam fans, felt a bit disappointed, a bit let down because they weren't able to bubble up the characters, so they weren't able to have all the kind of like sexy, gory, over the top, kissing at the altar.
GIF-worthy moment.
And they weren't able to pile drive on top of each other. I mean, you're lucky. I thought the wedding was fine, to be fair.
It was alright, yeah. I mean, frankly, the Balam fans are lucky because I think the Balam wedding is about the only wedding we've actually seen this year. Considering we had a double wedding on Christmas Day, we saw neither ceremony. Yeah, I think so you want to be thankful that you saw Balam's wedding, quite frankly. Yeah, I mean, Balam are Balam, aren't they? They sort of go along doing their thing, having various angst-ridden stories throughout the year. I think we have been reasonably critical of Balam throughout the year, just because of the amount I think it's more because of the amount of attention they get compared to other couples, such as Jack and Denise,
other LGBTQ couples as well.
Well, yeah. Yeah, because
that's what really annoys me. That all the LGBT representation seems to be Balam, and again, they seem to be rectifying it a little bit by the end of the year. But I wish that they would have done more. Like you say, Ikra and Mila, perfect. Love their story. Love to learn more. Ash, love to learn more.
Ash and Ikra.
We'll talk about Suki maybe a bit later. Yeah, Ash and Ikra. It just. I don't know. And that's what, I think that was our biggest grind. That and the fact that we called it the Balam merry-go-round, where basically every week their story would be, there's a secret. They're hiding the secret from each other. They tell each other the secret. They make up. The Balam merry-go-round. It's just like, and there's someone quite rightly said on our, we said, we're getting sick and tired of the Balam merry-go-round. Someone quite rightly said on our YouTube comments, well, I'm getting sick and tired of you saying about the Balam merry-go-round.
Fair enough.
It's give and take.
Fair enough.
But everyone's allowed to have a view because that's where we are. We're an open forum here. So if you disagree with us right now or agree, comment below or get in touch with us on our Twitter and Instagram. Information at the end of the show. But yeah, no, I think that was our biggest gripe. What about you? Did you have a bigger gripe about Balam?
Yeah, I mean, this is the thing. I think I had a bit of a rant mid-year where I was saying, if they put in as much effort into other couples as they do Balam, we wouldn't be in this situation because there is, it's like you said it, you've said it yourself, but characters like Ikra, Ash, have just completely been invisible for most of the year. And I do believe we've now lost Ikra. Ikra's gone now. That was her the episode that just aired last week. Yeah. That was Ikra's exit. One of, I think, the most underused characters, considering how long she's been on the show. Good couple of years. Like, she came in at the end of John York Mark II era, didn't she? Absolutely nothing done with her whatsoever for the most part. She sort of kind of popped in and out of other people's stories, but never had one of her own, really. Played by a strong enough actress to have had stuff going on. There were storyline opportunities for her. The FGM storyline should have been one of the big defining moments of the year, and they sort of just kind of ticked a box and said, yep, that's us discussing FGM, moved it along, and then played out all the big character stuff that would have taken part off screen. Unacceptable, and frankly, the show should know better than to do stuff like that. I'd expect better from the show than doing stuff like that. Of course, the grey stuff kind of kept going and going and going. We got plenty of that, and we got plenty of Balam all year round as well.
Stop bringing up grey. Stop it.
No, because that's the whole point, though. Do you know what I mean?
That's the whole all the time.
That's the whole point, though, is the fact that we got more of the stuff that they clearly were more favourable of writing, as opposed to just ticking a box and saying, right, that's an issue we've covered, and ignoring characters. And I think, if I'm perfectly honest with you, that has been one of the big kind of niggles of the year as a whole, where it's been plot over character. Now, this isn't a new thing. We were sort of discussing this last year, but plot over character. Characters doing stuff that frankly feels wrong. Sharon and Ian, for example, over you know, and kind of pushing characters into doing meme worthy things is the show going after the same audience as it always was, or do you think this is an attempt? You know, obviously, all the sound effects we can obviously, you know, we've been very loud and very proud about saying how much we hate anything to do with all the sound effects and the stuff that kind of takes away from the stuff that's going on the screen. Is the show going after the same audience as it always has, or is this just an attempt to sort of grab the youth and get the youth watching the show more?
I don't know. I don't actually think consciously that was Jon Sen's plan. I just think Jon Sen liked sound effects, and slow motion apparently, and so just kind of threw them at the show. That's what it felt for me. That's what it felt like. I mean, we certainly need to look for grabbing a younger audience, but I don't think necessarily. I don't think they should treat the young audience as being a little bit kind of slow on the uptake, because I think they could easily grapple quite hard-hitting issues performed well in a very strong drama setting. I mean, you know, look at programs on Netflix, which are Bridgerton. Like, that's huge with a young audience. I've always been one, actually, I should say, to be like, I like that there's a kind of like a history to EastEnders. And so to use the history of EastEnders is for me, the foremost thing they should do. But it should always be a character over plot. I think regardless of whether you're aiming it toward a young audience or just the same audience to watch it day in, day out. I mean, it's that's what the show's about. It's character. It's all about the characters and what they do and interact with one another. And you know, Albert Square is a character. The Vic is a character, and the people interact with that as well. And I think that's another thing. Again, could be argued with COVID that's kind of lacking. I mean, better than some extent to like what other soaps are doing, where sometimes it looks empty. It looks certainly more. I think that's maybe unfair, but it is improving. But like, it's just. Yeah, maybe. I mean, another story then, which kind of upset me, where they changed the character, perhaps you could argue, is Ruby's story, where they gave her a miscarriage story, and when they basically turned her completely against Stacey, accused Stacey pushing her down the stairs, and then kind of manipulated Martin into taking her side. I mean, for such a strong introduction with Ruby, a character where when she was first announced to be introduced, Ben and I were kind of like, ooh, that's a strange character to bring back. I wonder what they could potentially do with her. And then they did the kind of like the consent storyline. And that really pushed Ruby as being a very strong-minded female character. And then they just changed her to be convenient for this miscarriage storyline.
Yeah. Ruby had quite a journey this year, didn't she? Because she turned into... I think she was basically turning into super bitch mode, wasn't she? Because... they made a big thing. Well, no, because they made a big thing of her being Johnny Allen's daughter, didn't they? That was sort of it was almost Ruby's key motivation. You know, whenever she needed to be evil, she'd look at the photo of Johnny Allen on her desk at the club and just absorb the evil of Johnny Allen and then go away and do something evil. Yeah, exactly. Like push Stacey down the stairs. That whole saga happened this year. I mean, Lacey Turner, bless her, you know, going on another maternity leave story. I did feel for the show in the sense of the amount of maternity leaves they had to write in this year. There was quite a few. Arguably, you could say, you didn't need to make it. There was a lot, but they didn't need to make it as complicated for themselves as they did. You know, it's like we said before. There is nothing wrong with a character going, do you know what? Screw this square. I'm going on holiday for 3 months and then just going. Like, that's fine. I can deal with that. Or, in some cases, just don't show the character on screen for a few months. They've done it with characters that are on the show at the moment and just not showing them for months. So, what's your issue? You know, Stacey getting sent to prison. Jean's cancer, of course, this year, which was, because obviously Jean discovered another lump in her breast Christmas Day last year. And then we had a full-on 10-month saga of, does Jean have cancer? Does Jean not have cancer? That went on and on and on and on. And eventually, it was answered in one episode where Jean just saw a doctor. Oh, no, you don't have cancer. Oh, good. That's jolly good then.
Well, no, she got arrested, didn't she? She got arrested and she told
she got arrested because of the whole Stacey story.
When she was getting questioned.
Yeah.
No, she got arrested because she had pot in her garage. Because Big Mo left this year, left a shed full of pot for Jean to look after. Yes, this happened this year.
That happened.
and then she got arrested for the pot. Because of Ruby again, and Ruby got her arrested for it. And Jean's basically defense was, well, I don't care if you're going to arrest me and take me to prison because I've got cancer. And then she had a bit of a turn, so they took her to the hospital to have tested. And in front of the detective, as a beam of light came down on Jean, she just sat there and went, "I'm okay." The nurse told her that you haven't got cancer. I don't know what you've been worrying about for the last 8 months. Making videos, praying to people, doing all kinds of stuff. Nope, you ain't got cancer. You're fine. So yeah, but Big Mo left this year as well.
Yes, she did. Yes, she did.
Garage full of pot for him.
I mean that again. I mean, yeah. To be fair, I've said only the one storyline has gone on and on and on. It's stuff. What I've noticed actually, it's stuff that's gone on and on and on. That it kind of feels like we don't know quite how to end this, and we'll just keep it going until we work out a way of finishing it. Like the jeans, like the pot in the shed, that made no sense from start to finish. That was one of the most ridiculous stories I've ever seen in my life. Mo just leaving this industrial-sized weed farm in Jean. There was a moment I remember when Jean walked into the shed after she thought that she'd killed all the plants. She kind of came back in and then there's just this towering weed plant standing over. I half expected that weed plant to suddenly burst into speed. It did. I half expected that weed plant to start bursting into songs from Little Shop of Horrors. Feed me, Jean. Yes. It was huge. So
to be fair, I wouldn't put it past Jon Sen considering it as an idea either. To be fair,
EastEnders the musical.
The writers' meeting. It's like, right,
a musical episode.
Yeah. How are we going to introduce a Seymour character? An Audrey too.
And who is he going to have an affair with? Oh, I don't know.
Potts along.
It's exactly. Potters along, nice. So I mean, what else? No? What else? What have you got? What other madness occurred this year?
What else have we got? Well, I tell you, if we're sticking to madness, then we might as well just bring up the "It Is What It Is" story.
Oh, the Lucas
Chelsea
story, yes,
and Lucas. They both returned together. Lucas thought that he had... Everyone thought that... Well, no one thought, but we were meant to think that Phil Mitchell had sent out a mob to beat up Lucas. But it was Chelsea all along, because Chelsea's been having... dealing drugs with her boyfriend, but then she wanted to get out of the relationship and she had to do one last drug push abroad.
That's
and
for general.
Lucas ended up taking the hit. Lucas ended up taking the hit with the security guard who we both adored because he looked like he was stroking the chin of a horse as he was ushering people through the gates.
Yes.
And,
yes. Yes.
And so that was a mad story this year.
I hated that
which
story.
I think you loved, actually.
Hated that story. I hated that story. Honestly, it was just nuts. It was nonsensical. It made no sense. The thing is, they brought Lucas in, and I remember they were doing all sorts of things. Like he saw Ruby in the street, didn't he? And sort of had a moment where he looked like, urge to kill, rising, exterminate, and it sort of felt like, what are they going down the path of, we're going to explore Lucas's mental health, we're going to look at... No, none of that, nothing quite so sensible. We just went through this mad little saga where Chelsea couldn't decide whether she wanted to have her dad sent to prison or whether she wanted to... It was just nonsense, absolute nonsense. Obviously, Denise slowed down time that year. Denise slowed down time during that storyline. We both loved that.
Oh, she did.
End. Yes, Denise the Time Lord.
Look at me.
Look at me. We got a good game out of that this year.
Get to the chopper.
I'll be back. You better not be, Lucas, mate. I tell you that. Please don't be. I mean, you'd quite like to see Lucas again, didn't you? I think we finished a storyline where you were saying, I wouldn't mind seeing Lucas again. I'd love him to come back. No, I don't want him back. If that's the kind of rubbish that we've got to have, it doesn't make any sense for him to. It didn't make sense for him to be out of prison in the first place. A couple of years ago, he'd already tried to escape prison, like Hannibal Lecter, the type of person that we were led to believe he is. But now he was let out of prison, completely unguarded, nobody kind of paying attention to what the ex-serial killer was doing. Like, he didn't have a police escort, he was allowed to just return to Albert Square, like, wander around the square. He could have easily have killed about 3 different people before he ended up back in prison again. It made no sense. It was ridiculous.
I was going to say, do you know who else though we can consider a good thing to come back, and that will come back to be introduced, and that's Raymond. But we did have to have Ellie Dixon join in for that storyline where she was meant to be the most scariest woman in the world, but she ended up getting done by Phil by planting drugs in her house.
Yeah, that was a shame. I was actually kind of quite enjoying Ellie for the most part. I thought she was being built up to be something a lot more interesting than she eventually materialised to be, which has been a sort of thing of this year, I think, and a running theme that something will get built up and then just fizzle out. Like it just doesn't. It's like they get bored with it and then just sort of move on to something else. And I actually thought that Ellie might have been interesting because it's been a while since we've had like a real ball-breaking woman on the square. And there was nothing nice about her whatsoever. She wasn't a nice person. We were led to believe that she was one of the most dangerous women that could walk London streets. But all of it happened off screen. Again, all of it happened off screen. We were never really shown why we should be fearful of Ellie as a character, why we should be intimidated, why we should see her as a villain. We were just sort of reliably informed by a few other people on screen. She's a bad person, and we mustn't mess with her. And it's a really bad thing that she's around because we're all in danger now. And it's like, why? Why? What is she going to do? What power does she have? What connections has she got? But that was all just to get Raymond back on the square, like you say. And for this sort of battle between Denise and Phil as to who was going to have custody over Raymond. How do you think that's gone? Do you even care where Raymond goes at this stage? Like what happens next with the saga?
I love Raymond. I think he's adorable. Raymond is adorable. I just want to pinch his little cheeks and eat him. He's just gorgeous. I just love the kid actor so much. I think he's great. I mean, if anything from the beginning of this year, 2022 is to go by, then obviously it looks like we're going to continue the story of who's going to have Raymond ultimately. So, I mean, he obviously needs to stay in the care of Denise because he needs to have a stable as EastEnders can be, family and a sensible person around him, and not Phil Mitchell, who will ultimately destroy him like he did with every other one of his children at one point in their lives. So yeah, Raymond stick with Denise. I love Raymond with Denise. I think they're lovely. Another character to the left this year, another one is Tiff, after she found out that Keegan had slept with Dottie. Were you sad to see the end of Tiff, to say goodbye? Because she was quite a long character as well. She'd been there for 10 years?
She was. I will miss Tiff because, I mean, like a lot of characters that are there from very young, Tiff was an amazing child actor, wasn't she? Do you remember Mini Tiff? Little Mini Tiff when she first arrived with Bianca and when Whitney first arrived. Little Mini Tiff was hilarious. Her little rivalry with Zainab sitting on the wall. And she kind of grew up to sort of be her mum's daughter in a lot of ways. She went through quite a lot over the past few years, especially. And it's a shame to lose Maisie Smith now, I think, because I think Tiff was just really starting to hit her stride as a character. I quite enjoyed her and Keegan together. I thought they were quite a sweet little romance. It was a shame to break that up. But you know, when an actress wants to leave, what can you do? Really, you know, it's you can't really do a lot about it. So I'm fairly sure we'll have her back at some point as soon as Maisie Smith realises that she can't actually fly to Hollywood at the moment.
She's doing the Strictly tour. This year.
Yes,
and it got announced today, the day we are filming this. So yeah, that's interesting. And a story that we both kind of thought that was a bit strange was Suki and Honey this year, and the Panasars in general. Actually, I just want to talk about the Panasars in general, because they felt so lacking this year. And again, keep listening to our predictions at the end, because I suspect that we both had so much hopes for the Panasars in 2021, and again, I just didn't feel like that they got on their stride this year. There's this second year running. Nothing seems to have happened. Nothing kind of concrete for them, or at least nothing that we thought would happen with them. Instead, we got the Honey and Suki story, where Suki kind of is questioning whether her friendship with Honey felt like it was more. She kissed Honey, essentially. And
that was... I don't know. I think it's just because of the amount of time they are taking to try and kind of explain the Panasars to us, I think is really harming them. Because I can't remember when we were first informed of this father in prison, that there was a house fire at some point that's in some way integral to... Do you think they even know what that was about? Do you think they've decided what exactly went on that night or during that time when we didn't know them that resulted in any of it? Do you think they've even decided they've written that, or they've just sort of put
Probably
it in
not.
as a sort of pinpoint? No, it doesn't feel like they have, because it feels like we should know that.
A bit like a Jordan's died
thing.
It's just been thrown in.
Yeah, just kind of thrown in.
They're trying to now work around it.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think, like, anything new we really learnt about the Panasars this year, apart from it's possible Suki might be bisexual. That's about all new stuff we've really discovered. And the thing is, I absolutely love the Panasars as a family. I really think they brought something really interesting to the square. Kierat working with Ben, that's all still got to come out as well. Oh my god, like Ben's involvement in Jags' death, is that ever going to come out? Or is Ben's going to really start...
Oh yeah, Jags' death!
Right? Yeah!
Poor Jags.
That's all going
Why do we always forget about Jags?
Why do we?
Poor Jags.
Poor Jags.
Rest in peace, Jags.
Oh, we missed you.
Well, why? Vinny in the gold bars as well. Vinny's gold bars.
Yes, the scary the Russian guy that died in the back of his car. Yeah.
I'm going to shoot the oil. That's my Russian.
Like a Thunderbird. Cheers. Was it? Is that what it was? Yeah, like Walker. Yeah, like a Thunderbird doll. I really want more from them. The thing is, they're a really strong family, and I think they could really bring something to the square. I really like Suki behind at the Suki Mart, despite the fact that it's a corporate company. So I'm not entirely sure Suki could have bought that and owns it, because if you remember. Suki, well, you remember, because Yolandi came in at one point a couple of years back, didn't she? And it was all part of some. It was like a little mini Tesco or something, wasn't it? Like it had a bigger company that owned it, and it had a head office. I don't think it has that anymore.
So presumably it's just a franchise or something that she's bought, I guess, or else they would have renamed it. I wish they had renamed it, because then you could distinctively say this is a Panasar. Yeah. They keep saying an empire that they're building. They've got lots of houses. Again, this all happens off screen where they collect rent for houses. So they've got this empire that the Panasars are building,
and the rat catching.
But we don't really see that. Yeah, on the call centre above the bookies.
Yeah.
That Mo used to work at, but now doesn't. Stacey used to work at, but now doesn't.
Stacey used to work there. Bernie used to work there.
Bernie even's left, so no one works there anymore. Unless it's Tracy. Tracy's got a third job now, working at the call centre. Although you never see Tracy at the pub anymore. Tracy's never.
I'd love that if like they went over to the Kira office at one point and Tracy's just there on the phone. I'm going on my break, Kira. Okay, it's like, that would be amazing. Yeah. I think it's safe to say one of our biggest wishes for the next year is to make the Panasars front and centre and actually give us what we want from them, because actually we both like them, and I think on the most part they're a fairly popular family. It's like they've done. Something else. It's something else that's happened this year in quite a lot. Like the ingredients are there, but nobody's bothering mixing them together. Like it's just like they've given us all these things. It's like they've given us a big old bucket of Lego and just poured it out on the ground and say something great will come out of that, but you've got to mix it together yourself. And that's essentially what's happening, because we're putting together pieces that we're being told that's happened off screen. It's just frustrating. So yeah, Panasar's top of the list for getting sorted out next year, please.
One last thing then I just want to talk about, because we both agree, and I think it'd be nice to end on a high, and that is the Monroes. The Monroes were introduced this year, and they have been terrific. An absolute terrific family. Started off with Dana, who was Bobby's girlfriend. Bobby and Dana, again, don't you dare break them up, BBC. If you're listening, legs will be broken. I tell you. Or toes, one or the other.
Toes. You're going to force them to stub their toe. Yes.
Yes, I have. I'm going to make them look at me as they walk toward a wall or a door frame.
That'll teach you. That'll learn you.
With Dana,
yes.
With Dana. And we started seeing a few kind of indications that perhaps they weren't too happy with Dana's choice of partner, but then we were pretty much made certain that the choice of partner was pretty bad when Aaron, or in their opinion was bad, when Aaron was introduced, and then the Monroes were complete. We hear about the mum quite often, but we don't know quite what's happened with them. But this has been done very well, because we get little bits and pieces, and little sprinklings of bits and pieces, and we're intrigued to find out what's exactly going to happen.
Yes, but that's the conversation we were having about the Panasars last year. We were saying, oh yeah, we're getting lots of crumbs. Yeah, all of this is going to come together to be lovely. It might turn out that Suki's ex-husband and Harvey's ex-wife are living together, and they can both come in at the same time. That would kill a few birds with one stone, wouldn't it? That would be nice. I love the Monroes. I think they're a great. I think they're a great family. Yeah, and I think they're really interesting. I love this far right storyline. I have a horrible feeling it's going to end very quickly over the next couple of weeks, which again is almost conveyor belt sort of like. And this is the time we discussed right wing storyline. Who knows? The New Year's Eve episode. I agree with you. I've started to agree with you that I think something was changed. I really do think something was changed for that New Year's Eve episode because it was all building to something huge and climactic. And now it's especially with Icarus' exit, it sort of feels like was maybe Icarus supposed to die in an explosion? Did they maybe kind of get the idea? Or did they maybe get the idea that, showing a Muslim dying in an attack aimed at the Muslim community wasn't probably the best thing to show on TV? Maybe. I don't know. We may never know as to why stuff was changed, but it does feel like something was. But yeah, as a whole, this story is really strong. Now, are we still going to be discussing Aaron a year from now? Is his redemption era on the way? Or do you think that he'll get discovered and been sent and then hastily sent off to prison and then we would just be left with Harvey and Dana?
I hope not, because I really want to see more of Aaron. And I'm really interested in the story where you've seen him building up in 2021, where he's kind of been a part of this group. He's been indoctrinated and he's been, kind of brainwashed into thinking this way about, people who are foreign and shouldn't be allowed in the country and this, that, and the other. And I just want to see him kind of like how he exits it, how he gets out of the group, because that for me is a fascinating story. That is a story which I would be on board. I want to see it long term. I want to see the problems that he's going to face. I love that his dad Harvey is fighting for his son's cause, which again we saw near the end of last year. I'm also interested how Bobby is going to be part of this too, because Bobby's now seeing a few seeds again right at the end of the year. Started seeing things where he's kind of putting the pieces together and working out that perhaps Aaron had more to do with the bomb than he's letting on, or him and his dad are letting on.
I'm wondering if they decide to get rid of Aaron, will the Monroes be anywhere near as interesting with it just being Dana and Harvey? Can those two characters kind of keep the interest going? I mean, obviously, like we say, we've got the mother. Hopefully, is a component along the way at some point. Who knows? Maybe not. But I would like to see Aaron kind of stick around because I think he's a very interesting character. He's played very well. And he's actually been one of the better written characters this year as well. I kind of thought that his rants to Harvey have not felt forced. Sometimes we'll get a character, especially when it's a character that's focused around an issue-based storyline, and it's like this character is sort of spalling out the most cliche, stereotypical thing you can imagine coming from a person like that. Whereas actually with Aaron, it sort of felt quite natural, and it's almost, and it is believable that this character thinks that way because we've heard we've heard those sorts of rants quite a lot over the past few years, especially. So I think it'll be a great shame to get rid of him, and I'm very interested to see where that goes. But if I had to make a prediction, unfortunately, I have a feeling we won't be talking about Aaron this time next year. That's my only prediction that I will give you.
No, you have to keep your predictions to yourself, Rob, because you don't make your predictions now. You keep your predictions until our next review for 2022 and see how right and wrong you actually were. And as luck should have it, we've now come to the part of the show where we're now going to read our predictions that we wrote in January in 2021 of what we thought the direction the show was going to go. Let's find out. Let's start with you then, Rob. So, Rob, read out yours, and for each one you get close, we'll agree on a point system for you and for me, and we'll see how many points you end up.
There's no need. I don't think I'll be. I don't think I'll be troubling any sort of point system. Right. So my main prediction was Ikra will be long gone by the end of 2021, probably dead. Bizarrely, that didn't happen. Although it nearly happened. I feel it feels like that nearly happened, but. She is gone, but it happened this year.
I'm going to give you a point for that, Rob.
And she's still alive.
Yeah,
all right. Okay, you're very generous.
But it could have happened. It could have happened at the end. It could have happened at the end of 2021 if we were right to say that there was a bit of a rewrite happening last minute. So
that's true.
You're going to get
that's
a point,
true.
Rob. That's going to be a nice point.
All right. Thank you very much. The Panasars will be involved in a storyline. I mean, that's wrong for a start of, isn't it? The Panasars will be involved in a storyline. The Panasars will be involved in a storyline where they try and get control of the Vic. The year ending with Suki smirking and raising an eyebrow from behind the bar, but the story will ultimately end with the Carters back behind the bar again. That would have been good, wouldn't it? That would have been nice.
I would say that would have been lovely. And if you had replaced the name Suki with Janine, then I might have given you a point.
Yes.
Because I feel like Janine has been spending the year trying to get the Vic. So you knew that someone was trying to get possession of the Vic, just the wrong person.
You're really
there
reaching.
There's lots of eyebrow raises though by Suki this year. I'm being nice to you here, Rob. I'm being nice to you.
Thank you.
But I'm not going to give you
Suki and her handbag.
Yeah.
No, I wouldn't. Suki and her handbag have been a key highlight of the year, but what else? Do you want to do one, or shall I just read all mine out? Do you want to do one? Do one of your own now?
Oh, go on then. I'll read one of mine then and see if I can get some points back. Claw some points from you. So here we go. So my first prediction for 2021, way back in January, I wrote, Jean will commit suicide before she becomes too ill from cancer. Now, I still thought she had cancer.
Didn't we all?
However, Sean will return.
Okay, you can get a point for that.
One point for me.
One episode. One episode
for a couple of episodes.
Yeah, I mean, we had.
I said for a couple of episodes.
Yeah, well, we had the one episode return where Rob Kaczynski happened to be in the neighbourhood, so he decided to turn up and film an episode. But that works. You can have that. You get a point for that.
Yeah, I called him. And said, I've got a prediction on you, so you better get it down right now.
Get here now.
Sean will return for a couple of episodes and will be the one who discovers Jean and stops Stacey from entering the room. See, that would have been nice.
That would have been nice. Well, no, it would have been absolutely tragic. Yeah. But yeah, no. So euthanasia type storyline. Effectively, you were expecting. You were expecting Jean to do a Peggy, essentially, weren't you? That was your. Yes,
but Sean would have found her and then stopped the rest of the Slaters from seeing her. So Sean would have ultimately, because I thought that would have been quite nice, because Sean and Jean always had that kind of very, that relationship that kind of was very difficult between them. And I just thought for Sean to be the one who finds his mum would be ultimately be a nice kind of almost a complete circle end. So that's what
that would have been interesting.
What's your second?
I'm glad she didn't though.
1 point each.
I'm glad Jean didn't die. 1 point each. Okay. I'm glad Jean didn't die though. That would have been very sad. Now I think I'm getting points here. Sharon and Phil will be back together and have broken up and be back together again. That in itself is, I think, one prediction. Yeah, I think so. I mean, we're basically on the cusp of them being back together, aren't we? Yeah. It seemed like an easy option, but I think it's an easy point, really.
That's a very short prediction. You get paid by numbers.
If we're doing it tennis style, then I can do it another way now. So yeah, carry on. What's yours?
Okay. Well, mine are quite long. See, I found this when I've done predictions in the past. I write full, long storylines for something. My second one then is Suki's husband will be introduced into the soap after being released from prison. And we discover that he is abusive towards Suki and his children. After a heated night of family arguments, the Panasar father will be murdered by one of the Panasar children. I predicted Vinny, so none of this has happened. And they proceed to cover up the murder. Maybe body buried under the armoured garden a la Brookside. And head into a year-long storyline where the family hold the secret.
I would have loved that. That would have been amazing.
That would have put the Panasars in the front, wouldn't it? That would have put them front row centre.
I believe that was the original story for the Ferraris, wasn't it? When they were a thing all those millions of years ago. That was the original story that was planned for them.
I think they might have been.
Yeah.
Yes, I think you're absolutely right.
That would have been interesting.
Right, yeah.
But no, I think that would have been an amazing storyline, and that is what should have happened. I'm very intrigued now about this father, and it would have been lovely to sort of see that sort of vulnerable side to Suki and have an explanation for it, wouldn't it? That would have explained quite a lot about Suki's personality. What could have been, eh? What should have been, what could have been. Alright, my next one is, now, Ballum will be no more. Callum will be killed in some angst-filled tragic story which involves Phil somehow having a role in his death, which will forever shape the Ben-Phil dynamic.
Nothing close. Not even close. I mean, I've got an almost similar prediction. If you'd like to hear it.
Yes,
let me just
please.
see if I can find it. Here we go. Ben and Callum will break up and get back together at least 56 times. So that's more than the number of weeks in a year. Ending with Callum leaving the soap either by him killing or being killed at the hands of Phil Mitchell because he likes to kill people off that are closely related to him. So,
see, I would have given you the point. I'm afraid they broke up and got back together 54 times this year, so I can't give you the point for that, I'm afraid. Yeah, sorry, shame. Rules are rules, though, Alex, I'm afraid.
That's true.
I mean, I think that kind of puts out. I think that's quite interesting to sort of where we had Balaam at the start of last year, where they were in our brain. It's like they're not going to be together, and then we at the very least, I think we predicted. I think both of us predicted that we were going to have the Balaam merry-go-round, though. I think our tone in both of those predictions suggests that we knew what kind of ride we were going to get before we ultimately ended up with. I think we both predicted a death, but that didn't happen. But I think that we both did predict the Balaam merry-go-round. So actually, I think we should both have a point each for that.
Okay, we'll do that.
Let's do that.
It's even Stevens then. Yeah, okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we'll do that. I mean, I think Balaam are stronger now than they were before. Let's just say that much for a bit of a positive tone.
We'll see how we go, because 2022 may well be the year of the Balaam polyamory story. So we'll see what Woody brings to the mix, and whether we see Woody again. Who knows? My next prediction was another pregnancy will add yet another baby to the Slater household. Alfie will have made a return. Whitney will also have a baby. None of that. Has anyone Slater?
Oh, well, the only thing I would say about the Whitney thing is that if they had maybe kept to their plan of having Whitney and Gray together, then Whitney probably would have had a baby and not Chelsea.
Yeah. Do you think that Chelsea was always intended for this role, or do you think Whitney at one point was going to be sort of like the key sort of person throughout the storyline?
I always thought it was meant to be for Whitney. Surely the story was always meant for Whitney, and I don't know why, but they then introduced Chelsea into the story. Oh. So I don't really I don't get why. I can't figure out why they done it. Other than they had nothing else to do with Chelsea, so they thought, oh, I know, we'll throw it into Gray's storyline, shall we? That's the only thing I can think of. Because they brought back Chelsea with the story as with Lucas, and then they just had nothing for her. Do
you know, considering the storylines that we've had with Chelsea since she's returned, it's amazing I like her as much as we do, because she's gone from the Lucas storyline to the Grey storyline. I think that's a fair play to the actress, because I clearly love her. That I really like the character that I'm prepared to completely ignore the rubbish that she's being forced to sit through. Yeah, that's mad. I remember because. Actress. I think she's great.
Right, this is one to think back into the past. So, Jack Evans returns with his mum, Natalie Evans.
Oh, God.
Looking for Pat, discovering that she had died. Jack prefers to be referred to as she and her, and has just transitioned into a female. She took her hormone blockers before puberty and has had surgery. Bobby begins a relationship with Jackie now, not Jackie, and is confused after she reveals that she is trans before they have their first intimate night. So again, none of that happened. Bobby ended up with Dana, and there's been no returns. But I would love to see a return of Natalie.
I mean, that would have been interesting. Yeah. I mean, I would, because I don't think the show's got a great sort of the show hasn't got a great history with trans characters, really, has it? We had Kyle, obviously, really. And that didn't work out, really. So I think it would be nice to try to sort of bring somebody in like that again.
I'd love to see more trans characters on EastEnders. I really would. I really, really would. Definitely would. I think I maybe should get half a point, because they did bring back a character from the past, and Janine. So I was quite right that they were going to bring back.
No, you're not getting a point for that.
Fondly in love. No, so half a point, I feel.
Rubbish. No, you're not getting.
But
half
if everyone agrees I should get half a point, comment below.
No one is going to agree that no one is going to agree that you should get half a point for you predicting that Natalie Evans was going to return because Janine came back. I'm generous, but I'm not that generous.
Come on.
All right, yeah. Let us know in the comment section.
Give me your next one.
Honestly. Well, my last one was, once COVID allows, the show will feature its biggest ever stunt. A huge week which will cause death, destruction, and at least one covered up murder. Now, I would argue that we nearly got that at the end of this year with the mosque explosion. I think that's what that week was planned to be, and we just all got changed. So I don't think that.
Listen,
I think that was originally
half
planned.
A point for the Natalie thing.
But there's no connection between
the only
Natalie.
thing I would say is they did. But there was the fire at the Mitchell house, which was a stunt.
That was, I
suppose
yes.
It could be argued, but that wasn't a week-long stunt, and the aftermath of that was laughably mocked by us afterwards because it was literally one episode of fire, and then about 2 weeks later, we found out that Tommy had just come out of hosptal. Tommy had been blown out of a window.
Yes,
so
and Natalie was coughing a bit. Sorry, I mean Janine was coughing a bit. Yeah, so there wasn't that much aftermath really, was there for that? Rubbish.
No.
Have you got your last prediction?
All right then. So my last one then. My last prediction. This was more of a kind of like I was putting it out into the world, thinking if I put it out there, maybe it will happen. Kind of story. I didn't think it would happen because it's Phil. But here we go. So Phil gets his exit storyline, putting the Panasars in line to take over the square. Then I put in brackets. This is more my idea, but I'm including it because if I put it out there, it might happen. So I'm kind of
cosmic ordering
person there. Phil starts showing early signs of dementia linked to his heavy drinking and many hits on the head or hits on the noggin, as I put it. This would be a very long-term story, including the return of Louise and possibly Grant. So that's how I think that Phil's exit should be. I think that's the best, because you're not only getting a wonderful, beautiful exit for Phil in the sense that he's getting this almost like Peggy, like he's kind of having this long term. I think it would be played very well by Stephen McFadden. I've never underestimated Steve McFadden's acting chops. I think he's a very good actor. I think when he's given a part he put his teeth into, he's fantastic, and I think a story like this would be fantastic. I'm sure they've done dementia before, but the one that sticks in my head is Frank's mum, Mo, who had dementia, and it was done well, but it was a little bit rushed and hurried, and that
Sylvia
was back in the
had it
80s.
Sylvia had it. Remember Sylvie Carter? I think that was the last time we've really done dementia.
Yeah, she got electrocuted by the tape recorder, didn't she? Yeah.
So I think that was the last time that dementia's really been tackled on the square. So I think we'd do it. It would be. It's. I mean, it's a very sad topic to cover, and it's always quite heavy stuff. But it's one of those storylines that is normally done pretty well. So yeah, that would be interesting to see. So yeah, that was our predictions. What were the scores in the end? And I'm not giving you that half point, no matter how much you whinge and whine. It's not happening.
Well, if you give me the half point, I still haven't won. So
you can have it
3
then.
and I got 2.
Oh, you can have the half point then.
Okay,
2.5.
I got 2.5.
Half a point out, Alex. How sad.
Half a point for me. But yeah. But I just think. Sorry to quickly return to the Phil story quick. But I just also think that'd be a nice little fitting story to kind of commemorate Barbara Windsor. That's the only other thing, because Barbara Windsor and Stephen McFadden were very close. And I think it would be a nice kind of way of kind of like full circle like that. But yes, you won ultimately. You won 3 points to 2.5 for me.
So on the whole, Alex, if you had to grade 2021 in EastEnders, what grade would you have given it?
D-, because it had moments. D if I'm being generous. I mean, this was not a classic year for EastEnders.
It wasn't. No, it wasn't. It's not one that you're looking forward to doing a review on in 20 years' time, is it? But I think D is fair. I think one of the big positives is that we've had a lot of very interesting new characters brought in that should maybe take us into a very interesting future. But I think D is valid. I think D is perfectly generous. Do let us know what your grade for this year has been, and let us maybe know indeed what you have predicted for 2022. We have another 12 months of EastEnders to discuss, and you can let us know by doing one of the following. You can contact us on Twitter and Instagram at Walford Weekly. You can find us on Facebook at Walford Weekly Podcast. On YouTube, don't forget to like, subscribe, click the bell to get notifications about our spoiler videos, and you can listen to us on Apple, Podbean, Spotify, or any of your favourite podcast sites. You can email us at robwalfordweekly@gmail.com or at alexwalfordweekly@gmail.com. That is it. 2021 is done and dusted. Goodbye forever. Into 2022 we go. I'm looking forward to doing another year's worth of podcast with you, Alex. That'll be a fun. That'll be a joyous fun. Until then, it's goodbye from me.
And it's goodbye from myself.
Happy New Year. Goodbye.